You ever sit across from someone who ruined your life while they sip tea and talk about interest rates? Because I did. 3 days ago. Maura Maddox, the woman who ghosted me mid-mortgage meeting, drained our joint account, and left town without a damn word, was now my financial advisor. Let that settle for a second. She didn't even flinch when she saw my name on the appointment list. Just walked into the conference room in her overpriced navy suit, pulled out a silver pen, and said, "Eldon Harker. Long time. Let's talk numbers." That's how it began. Not with an apology. Not with closure. Not even a blink of discomfort. Let me back up. Not to our relationship. We'll get to that mess. But to why I was even sitting there like a damp loser with a manila folder full of overdue notices and a pit in my stomach. A fire shut down the warehouse I manage. Insurance was dragging its feet. My landlord raised rent mid-lease. I needed to move fast. A short-term loan seemed smarter than selling my truck or borrowing from my brother, who still thinks I'm too emotional for this world. The bank assigned me a consultant. I showed up, filled out the paperwork, waited, and then she walked in. 9 years. That's how long it had been since she'd left. I never looked her up, never stalked her socials, never heard from her again. And yet here she was, in a $200 haircut, acting like she didn't wreck me so thoroughly I forgot how to make eye contact for 2 years straight. I didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Just watched her pretend this was normal. She pointed at charts, talked about fixed versus variable rates, asked how my liquidity was holding up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I answered her questions. Calm, measured, like I was on some twisted game show where the prize was my dignity. She handed me a contract. And then, while packing up her briefcase, she said it. "You should know. I almost didn't take this meeting. But then I figured, why not? You never really knew me anyway." And she walked out. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, reliving every lie she ever told me. Every time she called me safe and solid, like I was a mattress, not a man. Every stupid little note she left in my lunch when we were still playing house. She was right about one thing. I didn't know her, but I would. Because the next morning, I followed her. And what I found, let's just say, she's not the successful, put-together woman the bank thinks she is. Not even close. I wasn't proud of following her. I'm still not. But when someone turns your life into ash and then pops back into your world dressed like success, smiling like they forgot the fire ever happened, you get curious. Or vengeful. I honestly don't know which one it was yet. She lived in a high-rise. One of those new sterile towers with mirrored windows and valets who wear gloves for no reason. Her car was a leased electric SUV, the kind with doors that hum when they open like they're afraid to bother you. Yeah, that kind of life. I waited in the corner of the underground parking garage, behind a concrete column that smelled like damp cardboard. I wasn't stalking. I was confirming. That's what I told myself. Just confirming she really made it. That she really escaped the mess she left me in without a scratch. She stepped out of her car and walked like nothing could touch her, heels clicking like a clock winding down. I noticed she carried a gym bag. That was strange. I don't remember her ever liking the gym. Back when we were a thing, she used to say, my trauma burns more calories than cardio ever could. But here she was, in athleisure, with perfect posture, like a person whose heart had never been in splinters. I followed her to the elevator, stayed 2 cars behind, waited until she entered the building, then parked across the street and stared up at the lit windows. I didn't expect to see anything, just needed to feel that her life was real, tangible. Mine had felt like a hallucination for so long, I forgot what closure was supposed to feel like. And then it happened. At 9:42 p.m., her window lit up, not with a lamp, but with flashing blue and purple lights. Like a rave. I squinted, and I saw people. Not just Maura. There were men in suits, women in heels, someone wearing a crown, yes, a crown, and a guy with no shirt painting something on the wall. It wasn't a home. It was a scene. Like one of those weird networking events for people who don't believe in socks. I shouldn't have cared, but I did. I came back the next night. This time, I brought binoculars. I know how that sounds. But hear me out. If she was part of some weird cult, or running a scam, or laundering money through fake wellness brands, I wanted to know. I wanted to feel like I didn't just lose her to success, but to something messed up. Something I could look at and say, yeah, that makes sense. That's why she left me. And that's when I saw him. The man. The same man I'd seen on her social media 9 years ago, back when she still had it. He was in the background of one picture. Some co-founder of a failed meditation startup. Back then, she swore he was just a client she was ghostwriting for. But here he was, at her apartment, holding a drink, wearing a robe. And when she leaned in to kiss him, I didn't flinch. I just took a photo, because I knew something now that I hadn't known before. She never left me for growth. She left me for him. And that meant I was done mourning. The next morning, I called in a favor. A big one. And I started building a file. Not out of spite. Not out of hate. But because when someone leaves you burning in a ditch and then builds their castle on the ashes, sometimes you just want to walk through the gates and remind them you survived. And that you remember everything. The favor I called in came from a guy named Garrison Trent. Not a friend. Not exactly. More like a mutual survivor. He used to work with me years ago before he left the packaging plant and started freelancing as a digital bloodhound. Garrison's the kind of person you call when you want to find the paper trail that someone else paid to bury. I sent him the photo. The man in the robe. The guy Maura claimed was a ghost from her client list. Garrison didn't even blink. He said, "Give me 48 hours. It took him 12. His name was Jared Skinner. He'd been sued twice for investment fraud, once for emotional abuse in a civil case that mysteriously disappeared off the docket. No current job listed, but he somehow lived in a penthouse in the same building as Maura. He had 5 LLCs under his name. All dissolved. All within 6 months of opening. You see the pattern? The kicker? 3 of those businesses listed Maura Maddox as co-founder. Now my heart wasn't just broken, it was insulted. You know that moment when grief turns to nausea? When you realize someone didn't just leave you behind, they erased the version of themselves you knew and rebuilt something sinister in its place. That was me. I wasn't some jealous ex poking around for closure anymore. I was an archaeologist digging through the ruins of a life I never got to finish. And the deeper I went, the uglier it got. I found screenshots. Garrison is good like that, of Jared and Maura at wellness expos in Colorado, selling emotional detox water for $129 a bottle. I wish I was joking. They were targeting burned-out tech workers, claiming the water was frequency matched to trauma wavelengths. You know what it really was? Filtered tap water from a condo in Denver with lavender food coloring. I knew I couldn't take them down legally. People like that don't break laws, they bend them. But I could shine a light. And Maura, for all her smug control, always hated being watched. Exposure was her poison. So I made a decision. I built a fake identity. A startup bro persona named Calder Boone. Tech money. Fake crypto success. Custom Instagram page full of vague inspirational quotes and yacht pictures stolen from abandoned profiles. It was sloppy, but believable enough for people who only read the surface. Then I booked a consultation with their latest project, NeuroThrive, a nervous system rebalancing concierge experience. $3,000 for 1 weekend of vibrational alignment, ancestral restoration, and trauma decolonization. Again, I wish I was joking. I signed up as Calder. Maura wouldn't recognize me. Not with the beard, the glasses, the weight I'd lost, the fake voice I practiced for hours. Not with the new name, new attitude, and new confidence I stitched together purely out of spite and pain. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to sit across from her in plain sight and watch her lie. And this time, she wouldn't be the one walking away. The retreat took place on a private estate 2 hours outside the city, nestled in the woods like a cult compound disguised as a wellness getaway. You could smell the fake enlightenment the second you passed the stone pillars at the gate, hand-carved with phrases like "release the flesh" and "suffering is a program." There were wind chimes hanging from pine trees and bowls of smooth, polished rocks labeled with emotions. I grabbed one that said "unworthiness" and kept it in my pocket. Felt poetic. There were only 12 of us, all clients. We'd each paid thousands, or in my case, pretended to, for a weekend of transformation. There was a waiver, a non-disclosure agreement, a breathwork test. We weren't allowed to bring phones. The staff collected them in a cedar box and sealed it with wax like it was the Vatican. Maura didn't show up right away. That was part of the design, I think. Build the mystique. Let us sweat in hammocks and drink cucumber water while a man named Clater in white robes told us that trauma lived in our bones like mold and drywall. And then, at exactly 4:44 p.m., again, poetic, she appeared. Not in a business suit this time. No, She wore a flowing sand-colored gown and a gold chain that wrapped around her bare feet like serpents. Her hair was braided with twigs. Her voice, when she greeted us, was so soft I thought it might shatter. "I honor the wounded parts of you," she whispered, bowing low. "Let us now listen to what pain is asking." I almost laughed, but I didn't, because she didn't recognize me. Not even a flicker of suspicion. Not when she passed by me during the silent compassion walk. Not when I pretended to weep during the fire release ceremony. Not even when I asked a pointed question about business model scalability during a group circle, just to test if her capitalist side still twitched under all that silk. She smiled at me, called me Calder, told me I had the energy of someone who has grieved 1,000 lives. She placed a hand on my chest, lightly, and said, "There's a grief trapped inside you that doesn't belong to you." That was the moment I felt something shift. Not sympathy, not forgiveness. Clarity. She wasn't just a liar. She wasn't just a con artist. She was something worse. She believed it now. I don't know if she snapped somewhere along the way, or if this had always been inside her waiting to hatch. But this version of Mora, this soft-spoken prophetess of pain, wasn't pretending. She thought she was healing people. She truly did, which made it so much easier to destroy her. That night, while everyone was in the yurt for a sound bath meditation, I snuck into the staff tent and found her files. She kept handwritten notes on every participant. Every wound, weakness, financial limit, emotional dependency. She was documenting us like lab rats, predicting who could be upsold into longer programs, who might fund future retreats, who was most easily love-bombed. When I flipped to the page with my alias, I saw this. Calder. Latent guilt. Vulnerable. Possibly useful. I stared at those 3 words like they were scripture. Possibly useful. I was a resource to her, even in disguise. Even now, she hadn't changed at all. And so the next morning, when she chose me to partner with her for the one-on-one soul excavation ritual, I didn't decline. I smiled. I said, "Of course." And in that small wooden hut, lit by candlelight and scented with whatever herb they were burning to fake spiritual gravity, she sat across from me, bare feet tucked beneath her, eyes wide and trusting, and asked, "What's the one truth you've never spoken out loud?" And I leaned in and said something I hadn't even planned. "I've been watching you for weeks." She blinked, just once. Then I smiled wider. "And I know exactly who you are." That was the moment it began. Not the retreat. Not the healing. The collapse. She didn't react at first. Her eyes flicked toward the candle between us like she was checking her own reflection in the flame, trying to decide whether she heard me wrong. But I repeated it. Slower this time. Deliberate. Like I was telling her a bedtime story she wasn't ready to hear. "I've been watching you for weeks." Mora's breathing changed. Barely. Most people wouldn't notice it. But I'd studied her like scripture once. I knew the twitch of her left eyelid meant stress. The tightening around her jaw, that was fear. A quiet, mature kind of fear, the kind that didn't flinch or scream, but memorized the exits. She still didn't speak. So I leaned forward just slightly and said, "You look good, by the way. Better than last time. Healthier. Cult suits you." That's when she knew. I saw the exact second she figured it out. Her fingers flexed against the blanket on her lap. Her face went blank, but behind her eyes I saw it. Recognition, panic, rage, all trying to climb over each other at once. She didn't whisper a name. She didn't gasp. She just did what Mora always did when backed into a corner. She performed. She inhaled slowly, bowed her head, and murmured, "Thank you for sharing that, Calder. I'm sensing a fracture in your perception of identity. We can work with that." It was a neat pivot. Smooth. Disarming, even. She tried to pull the veil back over my face like I hadn't just ripped it off in front of her. She was pretending I hadn't said her name without saying it. Pretending I was the one confused. Classic Mora. I played along. For the moment. She called the session to a close a few minutes later, citing energetic overload, and guiding me through some fake breathing exercises while I fought the urge to laugh. When we stepped out of the hut, the evening sun was turning gold on the treetops, and the other participants were swaying in a slow, awkward dance around a bonfire, eyes closed like children at recess. Mora whispered to one of the assistants, and within 15 minutes, I was approached by 2 facilitators in linen scarves asking if I'd like to engage in a restorative solo detox. Translation? Leave. It was subtle. They weren't kicking me out. No, they were offering me space. A private path to integration. They even said they'd refund half my payment, as if I'd actually paid. But I smiled, thanked them, said I was finally beginning to feel safe here, that I'd love to stay for the full experience. They couldn't say no without tipping their hand. And just like that, I'd locked myself in the lion's den on purpose. Later that night, during a group session where we were instructed to chant mantras while holding hands in a circle, Mora announced there had been a shift in the collective energy, and that someone among us was carrying unresolved shadows that could destabilize the field. Her eyes never left me. Then she asked if anyone wanted to speak. I didn't raise my hand, but the guy to my right, a young hedge fund burnout named Troy who hadn't blinked in 2 days, pointed at me and said, I felt something weird coming off him, like judgment, like maybe he thinks this is all fake. It spread fast after that. One comment turned to 3. 3 turned to 6. Suddenly, I was being gently questioned about my intentions, why I'd come, what I hoped to gain, whether I'd been fully present. They used that word a lot, present, like it was a code for obedience. And Mora? She sat there smiling like the headmistress of a spiritual tribunal, letting her little army poke and prod me while she played innocent. But she forgot something. She taught me how to do this. She trained me in the language of emotional manipulation. I spent years absorbing the tools she weaponized against me. Vulnerability as currency, tears as defense, silence as dominance. So I let them think I was breaking. I apologized, said I was dissociating because of old trauma, mentioned how hard it was to trust women who reminded me of someone from my past. I watched her flinch at that. I even teared up. Just a little. Just enough. By the end of the circle, they were hugging me. Mora was furious. I could see it under the mask. And that's when I knew I had the upper hand again, not because I had dirt on her, not because of what I'd found in her files, but because I had become immune to her story, and now I was rewriting it, from the inside. By the 3rd day of the retreat, I had earned their trust, the group, I mean. The broken tech guys, the emotionally raw divorcees, the one woman who claimed she could hear trees scream. They believed I was just another cracked soul trying to be whole again. Mora had tried to turn them against me, but my fake vulnerability played better than her control tactics ever could. There's something people find magnetic about a man who admits to being lost, especially when you do it slowly, like it's being peeled out of you against your will. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was done playing quiet. The only reason I hadn't pulled the pin on the grenade yet was because I wanted them to be looking her in the eye when it exploded. No deniability, no exit ramp, no script she could fall back on. The opportunity came that evening. It was called the confrontation fire. Real name. It was supposed to be a sacred rite where each participant faced a painful truth from their past by voicing it aloud to the group. Symbolic, cathartic, completely orchestrated. We sat in a wide circle, surrounded by candles and sage smoke. A large ceremonial bowl sat in the center, filled with scraps of paper where we'd each written the name of someone who'd fractured us. We were to burn them one by one. Mora guided the ceremony, her voice hushed and trembling with reverence. People cried, whispered names. A man named Ravi admitted he still dreamt about the night his mother died in hospice. A woman confessed she slept with her boss to get out of homelessness. The pain was raw, real. And then it was my turn. I took the scrap of paper in my hand. I didn't speak right away. Let the silence stretch. Let the suspense build. Then, calmly, I said, the name on my paper is the woman who left me mid-rent cycle and drained my account while telling me she needed to reclaim her voice. People shifted uncomfortably. Mora's hands went still in her lap. But I wasn't finished. She vanished. I continued. Told her friends I was energy toxic. Never broke up with me. Just disappeared with a man she swore was just a client. Then she started 3 LLCs with him. Fake wellness companies. Selling lavender water for the price of a week's groceries. She changed her name online. Deleted her past. Ghosted the person who once paid her dental bills. Silence. The crackle of the fire was the only sound. Mora's eyes were locked on mine now. Wide. Alert. Scared. So I followed her, I said. Watched her rebuild herself into someone spiritual. Someone wise. Someone harmless. And then I signed up for this retreat using a fake name. I walked into her world. I wanted to see if she still remembered how to lie. A few people gasped. One of the facilitators half rose from his seat, looking toward Mora for instruction, but she didn't speak. Couldn't. I had the room now. I read your notes, Mora, I said. You're profiling these people, predicting how much money you can extract from their suffering. You've become everything you once told me you feared. A performance. A parasite in linen. And then I did something she didn't expect. I stood up, walked to the fire, dropped my paper in, then turned around, slowly, and addressed the group directly. Some of you will still believe in her. That's fine. She's good at what she does. But if you're here because your pain made you desperate for magic, don't give your wallet to someone who learned how to cry on cue. I walked out of the circle, out of the firelight, out into the cold forest air. And behind me, I heard her say my name. Not Calder, not brother. My real name. Eldon. The spell was broken. And in that single word, all her power evaporated. She came to my cabin after midnight. I'd been lying on the stiff cot for over an hour, still wearing my boots, staring at the ceiling like it might spell out a reason for everything. The walls were thin, and I could still hear someone from the main lodge playing those wind chimes they thought were healing. I hadn't expected sleep. I didn't deserve it yet. But when I heard the knock, soft, 2 taps, then silence, I knew it was her. No one else knocked like that. Mora had always been hesitant, even when she pretended to be brave. I didn't answer right away. I sat up, let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Door's not locked." She pushed it open and stepped inside like she was walking into a confession booth. No jewelry now, no robes, just black leggings, a hoodie, bare feet. Her braid was undone, hanging loose around her shoulders. She didn't look enlightened anymore. She looked human. For once, she sat down on the opposite cot and didn't say anything for a long time. The air between us was heavy, loaded with all the years we never spoke. I thought she might cry. I thought I might want her to. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned forward and said, "You could have just emailed me." That was it. Her first sentence. A joke. A deflection. Like we were exes running into each other at the DMV. But I wasn't laughing. "Would you have answered?" I asked. "No," she admitted. "Probably not." I waited for the apology, the remorse, the clarity, but it didn't come. Not yet. Mora always built her way up to vulnerability like a lawyer prepping for trial, strategically, piece by piece. She glanced at my hands, then at the duffel bag in the corner of the room, as if trying to figure out if I was planning to leave or stay and make this worse. Then she spoke again. "I didn't leave you because of Jared," she said. "That's what you think, right? That he stole me away, that I used you to get to him? You emptied my account while I was at work and left me a voicemail about how I needed to stop clinging. You think I care which guy you ran to?" She sighed. "I didn't run to him. I ran from myself. I was drowning in who I thought I had to be around you. The sad girl, the fragile poet, the one who always needed saving. You made me feel safe, and then I resented you for it. I know that sounds insane, but it's true. You resented me for loving you. No, I resented myself for needing it." There it was. Her truth, polished and packaged, still wrapped in the language of self-discovery, but quieter now. Not designed to manipulate, just offered. It would have been easier if she were still the villain, if she'd laughed in my face or told me I was weak. But instead, she sounded tired, older, smaller. And then she said the one thing I didn't expect. "You saved me, Eldon. And then I used you as the reason to burn everything down, because it was easier than admitting I was never whole in the first place." That's when I felt it, the pressure in my chest. Not anger, not vindication, just something collapsing quietly inside me, like a wall that had been holding up a grudge for too long and finally gave way under its own weight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say she didn't get to do this now, that she didn't earn the right to show up years later and reframe the story like we were 2 passengers in the same crash, equally broken. But I didn't, because part of me understood. And that was worse. I stood up, walked to the window. The woods outside were completely still. Not even the wind chimes now. Just darkness and the faint sound of someone crying in a distant cabin. Someone who probably thought this place would fix them. I turned back to her. "What do you want from me, Mora?" She looked at me like she didn't know. "I think," she said, "I want you to forgive me so I can finally stop pretending I already forgave myself." There it was. The truth. And I didn't know what to do with it. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry or heartbroken or plotting some last-minute comeback. I just didn't need to. Something in me had shifted. The same way a house stops creaking when the storm passes. I sat in the dark long after Mora left my cabin, watching the fire in the small metal stove flicker itself to death, until only embers remained. At sunrise, I walked out into the clearing barefoot, no jacket, no bag. Just a man and the cold air and the smell of dew soaking the wooden deck. I watched light spill between the trees like it had been waiting for me to notice it again. For the first time in 9 years, I did. I didn't think about what she said, not with anger, not with longing. It just existed in me now. A story that had been stuck in my throat finally told. She had shattered me, yes. She had also been shattered herself. And somewhere in that wreckage, we had stopped being villains and victims and just become two people who failed each other the best way we knew how. Mora found me there later that morning. She didn't speak right away, just stood beside me and watched the sun rise like it was something sacred. Maybe it was. Then she said, "I'm stepping away from all of this. The retreats. The brand. Jared." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I knew this wasn't for me. It wasn't a performance. She was saying it out loud to make it real. "I don't expect you to care," she added. "I don't," I said quietly. "But I hope you mean it." She smiled. And for once, it wasn't sad. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't trying to be anything. It just was. "I hope you find something," she said. "Peace. Love. Maybe even yourself." "I already found something," I told her. "What's that?" "A life," I said. "One that doesn't orbit around you anymore." And she nodded. Not offended. Not wounded. Just proud, maybe. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't swap phone numbers and promise to stay in touch. That's not how this ends. Some stories don't need sequels. Some people are only chapters. I packed my things. Got in my truck. Drove away from the forest, the incense, the lies, and the ghosts. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Later, back home, I deleted the photo of her and Jared. Burned the file I'd built. Closed the tabs. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I signed up for a cooking class. Bought new sheets. Joined a running group. Started laughing at things again. Not sarcastically, but really, with breath behind it. Mora was no longer the ending to my story. She was just a plot twist I survived. And the best part? I wasn't writing revenge anymore. I was writing forward.